So I wanted to go over this article out of the New York Times toilet paper of record. Aren't they like partially owned by by a Mexican, Carlos Slim? Anyway, Trump, the insurgent, breaks with 70 years of American foreign policy. President Trump has transformed the world's view of the United States from an anchor of international order into something more inward-looking and unpredictable.
The international order of things is messing with us.
Henry Kissinger.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity.
Maybe a little Soros in there.
I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order.
Anyway, the paper goes on and it talks about how an instance whenever Trump went to go to NATO, and they built this NATO's headquarters, and it costed $1.2 billion to build the NATO headquarters. So he's like, well, man, how much did we pay for this? So he's kind of just, they said his decorum wasn't all that great with these weirditas. Oh, the globalists have a way to do things, and the nationalists just did not. The nationalists did not mold well with them. You know, maybe he didn't like the caviar. Anyway, Trump is most foreign leaders are trying to figure out how to handle Trump, because they've been operating on America being an international new world order. They're saying it, international order, I should say. That's what they're calling it. They changed it. They don't want to say new world order. So
An international order.
So it also goes through difficulties with Merkel and how she's just so much greater than him and knows more about how the world works and he's asking her about doing trade deals directly with Germany, and she's like, no, you have to go through the European Union. You can't deal directly with the German people. No. I mean, and she's so great that she's destroying her country with all these migrants and migrant children. So it also goes through saying how Xi sucked up to Trump by throwing him, a nice little shindig in the Forbidden City, which no other president has been able to go to. And I remember the last time Obama went, they had to bring in a ladder, posted up to the back of the plane. He jumped on the side, slid down. Yeah, that's all kind of respect. Now here's the issue I was kind of getting with this one. Besides the article just being a hit piece on how he's doesn't know anything about the international new world order, but they even have a spot in here talking about globalists versus nationalists.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
For some of Trump's advisors, the key to understanding his statecraft is not how he deals with Mr. Z or Mrs. Merkel, but ideological contest over America's role that plays out daily between the West Wing and agencies like the State Department and the Pentagon. There's a chasm that can be bridged between the globalists and the nationalists, Bannon said. On the globalist side in his administration, there's General McMaster, Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, Rex Tillerson, the chief advisor Gary Cohn, and on the national side you got Mr. Bannon, who's no longer there. They said he's still whispering in his ear from the outside, which is, hopefully he stays talking to him. It keeps talking to him. Stephen Miller, the domestic advisor, and Robert Lighthizer. So everybody's known that he's surrounded by globalists, and that's probably why he's not getting his MAGA agenda done overseas. They're letting him do his domestic stuff as far as the tax cuts, maybe build a wall, but as far as overseas, that's basically they're running the state, the foreign policy like Hillary Clinton got elected. You know, they're still going forward with a policy that started in the Bush era of regime change. I mean, Wesley Clark basically pointed out exactly what was going to happen, and it happened over the years after he went on Democracy Now!, I think it was.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
So the end of the article basically runs into saying that on the tweet, his advisor pointed to a revealing meeting in the Pentagon on July 20th when Mr. Mattis, the globalist, Mr. Mattis, Mr. Tillerson, and Mr. Cohn walked the president through the country's trade and security obligations around the world. I wonder if he let him in on the whole Afghanistan secret, you know.
Hi, Allison, Dave, and Clayton. Yes, in some ways, the Marines' brilliantly executed invasion of Marja, this town in the middle of Helmand province, was the easy part. The hard part now is governing this province, a province, as you suggest, that has become addicted to opium in many, many ways. That is the principal crop that is being grown here. Forces in the world ever mounted, and in a sense, you're watching as this opium is being grown. I know it grinds at your gut. How do you deal with it? What are you doing about it?
Well, frankly, this is a part of their culture. So while it might grind in my gut, it's what they do. We provide them security. We're providing them resources.
After the group convened in a secure room from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a storied inner sanctum known as the Tank, Mr. Mattis led the session by declaring the greatest thing the greatest generation left us was the rules-based post-war international order, according to a person in the room. Well, who the hell knows who that is? Could be unnamed sources. But anyway, this article basically just confirms what everybody knows, is that he's surrounded by globalists. And there are rumors that he's going to be changing his staff and for this next year. I pray for this guy to surround himself with some MAGA nationalists, even though that's a dirty word, racist word. So that ties in with this. Pew Research, Trump media 3 times more negative than for Obama, just 5% positive, because the media, Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird media, will do whatever the international order wants. So the media coverage of Trump has been the worst. So has the coverage of Trump first 60 days were delivered greater share of negative assessment than coverage of his previous presidents. I mean, look at this. It basically 42% coverage for Obama could walk on water. He basically walked on water with the media. 5% positive coverage. So after saying all that, do you think this guy would be the most hated person in the country? Right? hated president ever at this point. You got the media coming down on you, 5% good coverage. But this is was on Drudge Report today. Trump matches Obama's end of the first year, 46% approve, 53% disapprove. So after all that negative coverage, this media is just not. No one's paying attention. I hate to tell you, these liberals in their bubbles on Twitter. I mean, they basically lap up all this fake news, and they sit there on this bubble. And I go in there and break that little bubble every now and again with some truth, and they can't handle it. They block you, call you whatever, call you a bunch of names. You can educate ignorance, you can medicate crazy, but you can't fix stupid. Peace.
The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides.